I want to emphasise that JobPath has not replaced any existing service provision, either that directly provided by staff within the department or that provided under other external activation services. I also want to emphasise that JobPath does not have any negative impact on the existing local employment service and jobs clubs services.
The nature and scale of unemployment is never static. The Department has outlined to you the necessity for it to be responsive to changing need. We support this objective and offer the following observations on the current model of contracting, the rationale for which was outlined as follows by the Department at your last hearing on March the 8th, and I quote, "Contracting is considered to be the most appropriate approach to augmenting resource capacity to deliver services during periods of peak demand."
What I want to ask you is, the government decided at a time of very high unemployment to hand over part of your work to a private company. Now, we were told last day that at the time the figures were such that this was absolutely necessary to deal with a crisis situation. Do you agree with that? I mean, could you have could you have dealt with the situation effectively? Presumably you would have needed more staff, but could you have dealt with the situation? And I know that what you say about averages and the fact that you're focused on areas of high unemployment, and we have a number of them in my own city. Are you properly equipped to do the work now that you've originally been contracted to do? I mean, do you need any assistance from any other source?
Straight away?
Yeah, I think we'll do it like that. We get direct answers on this.
I'll take the first question and then I'm going to hand over to Larry, who'll maybe talk about the figures. So I think in direct answer to your question, I believe we could have risen easily to the challenge at the time with the numbers we did in 2012 with an extra 50,000. So I believe the local development companies could have, as on personal view, responded to that challenge. Absolutely. And I think there is evidence, I suppose, of that in other programmes, like the TOOS programme. When asked to do it, we ramped it up from the beginning. The second question, are the current resources? I believe in terms of the resources that we currently have, they're reasonably adequate, and we can, coming from the department, we can run the services of the LES and the TOOS. And when we wrap around the other programmes, we have other budgets that then can complement that. So you'd always look for more money, but it's adequate enough, I believe, at this point to manage. That's the second question. Now, Larry might give some more details on some of the figures, if that's okay. And come back if you feel I haven't answered the question adequately.
Chair, I think that what we did see was JobPath coming into its own in 2015. While the decision was made in 2011, we had unemployment at 16.5%. One could understand the reaction, maybe the Troika had something to do with it as well. But we could understand that reaction. But there was a correlation between JobPath ramping up and certain areas in the country, referrals to our own organisations actually falling dramatically. I think that if we had a more consistent level of referrals right across the country, it would have been helpful. I think we could have certainly expanded our services countrywide. We're not countrywide at the moment, but we could have done that, and the partnership companies that do not actually run local employment services try to provide that service in different ways, and maybe those resources could be enhanced to give us a national profile. But just looking at my own area, didn't suffer from a lack of referrals, but in Dunleary Rathdown, for example, from 2015, referrals to TUS dropped from 722 to 261 at the very time that JobPath was ramping up, and referrals to their to the local employment services suffered a like fall. In actual fact, looking at last year's figures, we see that we were contracted for 20,050 referrals. That's the entirety of the local employment services, and we received 15,900, which is a 20% failure in referrals. If you've got that amount of referrals gone to an organisation like JobPath, it stands to reason if they were available to us, we would have got our full quota. We wouldn't have cuts in other programmes. It's that simple. I mean, it's maths. You know, there's nothing much more on it except maths.
Can I just put one point to you then very specifically, because you raised it, but when Mr Conlon spoke here 2 weeks ago, I just want to read 2 bits and I want a direct answer on it. He said, and I won't delay the meeting, I want to emphasise that JobPath has not replaced any existing service provision, either that provided directly by the staff within the department or that provided under the external activation services. He went on to say, I also want to emphasise that JobPath does not have any negative impact on the existing local employment service and job clubs. The department has continued its contractual arrangements with LES and job club providers following the introduction of JobPath. What are your comments in relation to that? Very specific. I think this is at the kernel. I'm sorry for interrupting, but that is exactly as he presented to this. How do you find those comments?
Dunleary Rathdown is a concrete example, and we have examples from around the country, and we can actually get the statistics for them and circulate them later on. We didn't want to bring sort of 20 examples with us, but there's no doubt it's had an impact. If you remove 60,000 this year and you give them to JobPath, there's a gap in what's available for the rest, and they have their own intro services, and we're, I suppose, considered a second-line service in that structure. So yes, TUS is now going through a downsizing. That probably wouldn't have been necessary if the 60,000 were available to ourselves. CE vacancies throughout the country are high, and again, there's no doubt about that. And in our own LES services, we haven't fulfilled all our contracts because we haven't received all our referrals.
Okay. Sorry for interrupting. Deputy D, are you?
No, yeah, thanks very much.
Okay. Deputy Brady.
Well, I think those comments cut to the essential points here that we're trying to get out, because this programme of work we're doing here now is looking at JobPath and the impact that it has had on services schemes such as those provided by yourselves. But I think when we had the department in here a couple of weeks ago, they outlined that when there was the high unemployment levels, they needed to build the capacity, and I think you touched on it there, that you would have had the means, you would have been able to ramp up across the state to meet those increased capacity needs that the department talk about. So I suppose the question I want to ask is, at any point from 2011 onwards, did the department ever engage in discussions with yourselves with a view, or asking the question as to whether you would have the ability to ramp up your own services across the state? So was there any communication there at any stage? And I suppose you outlined there that Dunleary and the TUS scheme there, and the number of places there. I mean, that's startling, from 722 down to 261. By way of parliamentary questions, I've got the figures there for referrals over to the LESs across the state, and they're down right across the board.
Ms. Kavanagh.
Can I take the first,
You can sort it amongst yourselves, yes.
question in relation to whether we were asked to consider scaling up the LES in response to the high levels of unemployment? At no stage was the option given to the local development companies to create a nationwide LES model and to ramp up the LES to meet, to meet the requirements. Now, we did engage with the department, or the department engaged with us in increasing the number of clients coming to the LES under the existing model, and we changed our model of engagement with clients in response to that. But the option of choosing to broaden and deepen the LES provision as opposed to going to a paid by results private tender model wasn't given to us.
Make two concluding points, Chairman. First, in relation to the community benefits, which you've raised yourself, just to put some flesh on the bones there. So with a TUS quota of approximately 8,000 and an RSS quota, that's the Rural Social Scheme, which hasn't been mentioned, of around 3,000, that's several thousand community groups that have real people allocated to provide services to them. So the people are allocated to the community sector, not to the private sector. So any, I suppose, tinkering or adjustment of quotas has implications beyond the narrow activation needs of the individuals. It's actually community services. And I think particularly from a rural perspective, and 35 of our members would be rural companies, the challenges that they face in sustaining viable communities, these schemes are playing a very, very central role, and that needs to be taken into account.